Welcome back to our second edition of Iron Therapy. I'm Dave Palumbo, joined by our RxMuscle staff therapist, Lesley Timbol. Lesley, our first show was very well received, I see.
Yeah, I was really happy to see that.
People liked your analysis and breakdown of Colin Van Moger's issues that he's having, I guess you can say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great.
Well, a lot of people did reach out to me also and said that, they liked the show because it made them feel not so bad about themselves. I don't know. I think it almost like made it okay when they saw that other people were having issues too, not just, you don't have to necessarily be a meth addict to relate to the show we did, but, everyone has their own little stuff going on in their head, and midlife crises, trying to find who they are at a certain age, and, substance abuse, trauma from childhood. And these are situations that if you don't know how to deal with this, it's definitely going to impact your bodybuilding.
Absolutely, and this is why I'm so glad that we're doing this type of podcast, Dave, because there's not many podcasts that focus on the mental health part, especially when it comes to bodybuilding or any kind of athleticism.
I agree with you. And today, after last week episode, I guess. Xavier Wills, our good friend over there at Desktop Bodybuilding, had reached out to me and said, "Hey, I'd like to come on and maybe talk about, some of the stuff that I'm going through. Xavier's, 30, that 30-year mark, midlife, not midlife, 20 going on to 30 crisis type thing. Why am I here? What's going on in my life?" And, he's got a wife and he's got 3 kids, and it's rough. It's rough. Today's world is rough. They were in tremendous lockdown over there in Australia for like 2 years. And so, let's bring him in and welcome to the show, Xavier.
Hey, what's up, Dave? What's up, Lesley?
Hi, Xavier.
Nice to see you.
I feel like you're a regular on all our shows now. Like I've had you chime in on at least I think 3 different shows that we have here on RxMuscle. So
yeah, it's cool. I always like getting involved and always watch what you guys do. So if I'm not on, I'm watching.
Thank you. Now, tell me why you contacted me, and let's put it out there and air. And you're willing to be fully transparent on everything that's kind of going on in your life now, right?
Yeah, for sure. Basically, I saw last week's episode. I thought it was really good. Obviously, sort of following the Colin Van Moger thing that's going on recently. We've seen everything that's gone up on social media, and it's sort of troubling in a way. And I thought that it was actually a pretty cool idea for a show because you hear of so much anxiety between bodybuilders. And Dave, I think you've even said you've had some anxiety attacks sort of things before, and it seems almost common. I've spoken to many bodybuilders privately, and what they might not put out publicly, they say in private, and it's sort of alarming, I guess, in a way. And I've heard James Hollingshead speak a lot about his sort of journey of self-discovery and thinking more about his mortality and all that sort of stuff. And we're around the same age at 31, 32 mark. And I think I'm sort of, that same stage of life where he's at, where it's you sort of get to a point where you go, whoa, okay, we're, 32 years of age or whatever. And it's not, you're still in the first half of your life, hopefully, but you sort of start to question things and why we're here and all that sort of stuff. So I guess that, I suppose through experiences, probably what James Hollingshead has gone through with, losing his mother, semi-recently, and losing his, good friend Luke Sando, me, going through a few things where, my partner, got cancer. I have lost someone cancer before, another partner. So I guess all those sorts of things combined with, other stresses and stuff in life, you get to that point where you sort of start to question a lot of things and all that sort of stuff. And I have suffered with anxiety and stuff myself as well. So I guess, it just sort of triggered me to go, maybe, being fully transparent and opening up and all that sort of stuff, even in a public setting, might be sort of somewhat of a good idea. And just, I suppose, interested in what you'd have to say about things, Lesley.
Absolutely. So we're going to talk about the meaning of life. Dave, how much time do we have?
We might have to go to a part 2. Yeah. Sure.
All right, I'll try to condense it.
I'm going to let you talk, but I want to say one thing. I happen to see this in males more than females, and maybe you can validate this, Lesley. When guys hit 30, something in their head goes off, that number somehow is mentally traumatic. Even if they don't necessarily acknowledge it at first, there's something about going from 20 to 30. Whereas women, I think they feel it more when they hit 40, I think. But for some reason, maybe because you feel like you have to have a sense of responsibility. What is it about men going from 20s to 30s?
It is that cultural upbringing, and obviously this isn't the case for every male. And some females go through it as early as in their even in their 20s. But it's that sense of responsibility that you put your big boy pants on. You're responsible not just for yourself but for other people, whether it's your partner, whether it's your parents, whether it's your siblings. It's being able to say, okay, well, how can I contribute and help out my family or those that I love around me? So it's that kind of pressure, and it's not necessarily other people putting pressure on that person. A lot of times the pressure is within ourselves to saying, okay, how do I up my game? I'm not talking about competing. I'm just talking about life, to saying, okay, how can I be more responsible? How am I going to be able to, make a living for myself and provide? So there is that pressure. And that's what causes a lot of people to go into this question of, okay, what is the meaning of my life? So I think it's a great question.
So what's the solution?
How do we deal
with this? Like someone like Xavier has way more pressures at 31 than the normal person would, because he's in a marriage where his wife had two children. Or was it one children before you met her?
She has 2 older children, and we've had 2 younger children together.
Right.
And she was diagnosed with cancer as well. So she's sort of still going through that. And yeah, it's sort of, I suppose, a lot of pressure on both of this as well. But yeah, it's been sort of, obviously a trying time. But
it's emotional, but it's got to be financial too. There has to be a component to that too.
Oh, yeah. That happened big time as well when sort of COVID hit, because just before that I had, I think what you guys call mono, we call it glandular fever. I was pretty sick for a while with that, where it was debilitating to the point where I had full body itchiness. I couldn't sleep at night, so I couldn't really work and just couldn't function. And then coming out of it, got back on my feet, training a few people, doing YouTube, all that sort of stuff. And then, COVID hit. So I lost all my clients, had to refund clients, all that sort of stuff. And all while, we was trying to, then obviously the cancer hit, had to raise, sort of money for that, because, being a New Zealand citizen, my partner, she wasn't covered fully in Australia. So there's a lot of, stresses and stuff through all that. And it did take a toll definitely on me. And through all that as well, I went on this almost journey of self-discovery in my own mind, and, was interested in trying things like, like DMT or like mushrooms and things like that, just to, try to find, I suppose you're sort of looking for something in a way. I don't know if that's the exact reason why I tried that sort of stuff and was intrigued by it more so. But yeah, that's sort of where I sort of found myself, after going through these sorts of things, where felt like it was sort of like one thing after another. It wasn't like there was no sort of let up to let us sort of like get on our feet properly, I guess, as a family and just individuals as well.
Lesley?
Yeah, just to kind of just want to touch upon before I go into the meaning of life is the hallucinogens. A lot of people have actually asked me about that. What it does is that, if you do it responsibly, just don't half-ass it or just trial and error it. You got to do it responsibly. When you try a hallucinogen, it's more about trying to go into an altered state of mind. Why? Because left to our own devices, when we try to do internal work, we get distracted. We get distracted by our insecurities, by outside noise. When I mean by outside noise, I don't mean necessarily literally, but the outside noise of what other people have said to us in the past, or what we think other people are thinking about us. That's what I mean by external noise. So we can't really have a clear thought, because it's constantly getting interrupted by all of our the stuff that we carry around. So what, being a more relaxed state will allow us to do is free up our mind, and we can come to a lot of conclusions. I mean, I'll look at the Beatles, like, they wrote, I don't know how many hits when they were, I mean, it's just when you're under a certain kind of influence, it allows you to be more free in your thoughts and be more creative. Now, there's a whole bunch of reasons why people do it. And I think for your purposes, though, from what we're talking about, Xavier, it's more to find out, okay, let me get some clarity on all this stuff that's going on in my life. There's got to be a reason. What can I do? How can I use that information and propel me forward instead of getting sucked into this vortex? So I'm just saying, I'm not necessarily advocating. I'm not necessarily saying don't do it. I'm just saying be responsible. If you choose to do it, just do your research like anything. But I think there's other ways that you can do that. So I want to try to help you with that right today. Sure. In order for me to go into any kind of method, let's talk about why this is so important, the meaning of life. It gives us a sense of purpose. It gives us a sense of accountability. Are we doing a good job once we have a goal set? It gives us a metric, as well as self-esteem. If we're doing really a good job on what's giving us meaning in our lives, then we can feel better about ourselves. And I'm not saying, the meaning of life is necessarily what makes you happy. That's a byproduct of it. Ultimate happiness is doing something that makes you happy by actually helping other people. So it's beyond ourselves. It's that why beyond ourselves. For competing, a lot of people do it because I want to get a pro card, and that's nice. But is there something behind that? There's that deeper why. And that will really help propel people forward. Now, I want to get off the competing piece. From your perspective, though, Xavier, when you're looking at the meaning of life, it's answering those questions. Who am I? Why am I here? What am I supposed to do? Now, those answers to those questions can differ over time, depending on the stage of life you're in. So when you're in your 20s, you might have some semblance of how to answer those questions. When you're 30s, it'll be different. When you're in your 40s, it will change. It's okay for it to change. You want those things to change as you change as well. So it's okay to be very, fluid with those. But if you're at a stage in your life of like, I have no idea. I have no idea why I'm here. I'm just trying to pay the bills. I'm just trying to get through the day. It's just a challenge to get through the day. Okay, so now let's talk about how to get there. If you don't know, there's this guy, Mark, and I have to look up his last name, but he came up with 7 questions that will help. And I want you to kind of think about these 7 questions to help you find your meaning of life.
Yep.
So one of the questions is, what type of shit sandwich do you want to eat? And what do I mean by that? So the shit sandwich means no matter what you choose in life, nothing is like rainbows and unicorns. There's always a price to be paid. There's always something unpleasant you got to do. It's a matter of, what are you willing to sacrifice? What are you willing to put up with to achieve what you want to achieve? It's got to be worth doing. So it's not going to be pleasant. So let's just be realistic. Nothing's fun all the time. Okay. So it's about saying, okay, and if you can find something that you find a little niche that not many other people are doing, well, your shit sandwich just got an olive on it. So, I mean, it's kind of like, great, you make it more palatable.
I think, you make a good point because, look at what you do. I'm not going to put myself, I don't want to give myself as an example. I'll use you as an example. You do your YouTube channel and you're probably making respectable money now from it because you put a lot of effort into it. The more effort you put into it, the more you'll get out of it, really. Mm-hmm. So you could work yourself to death essentially and make a ridiculous amount of money if you really wanted to. And you're actually doing something that you actually like, but it is work. So you're working hard, but you're working hard at something you do. And that's why I always say, if you do what you love, no one's got a better job than you do, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think one of the things is as well, like with like for me, like competing, like if I know that I'm going to do a contest prep or something like that, I know for a fact, I'm not thinking like, oh, I'm going to try to get shredded or whatever. Like I know I'm going to get lean. Like I know I have the ability to, I know it's going to happen. I have the plan, I know what sort of plan to do diet wise and all that sort of stuff. And it's almost like a sure thing. But with like other aspects of life, I feel like because there's, more road bumps and all that sort of stuff in terms of business, in terms of just, other aspects of life, being a dad and all that sort of stuff, it's more like there's more, I think, challenges along the way. So there's more stages for me, at least anyway, to get discouraged, I guess, where there becomes roadblocks and maybe it's like more like confirmation bias.
It's still a sure thing, Xavier. Just remember that. Just keep that in the back of your head. No matter how long it takes you to get there, it's still a sure thing.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things that I sort of struggle with in a way compared to like competing. Competing is just like almost feels easy at this point compared to those other aspects of life when other people maybe have the opposite. Someone losing weight might find it really hard, but they might be very successful business-wise or whatever.
But keep in mind when you get those roadblocks, it's turning to say, well, how can is life actually giving me, what looks like a piece of shit pie, but is it really a blessing in disguise? I mean, is it like a piece of lemon meringue? Like, how do I find, I use that expression, make lemonade out of lemons or make lemon meringue pie out of it. But it's more about saying, okay, if I'm struggling in this area, how can I capitalize on that? What can I use? How can I use that for fuel? And that can be tricky to do, but it requires some creativity. And sometimes, it helps to actually talk to other people, whether they're in your industry or not, just to kind of brainstorm and get some ideas.
You know what I do?
Yeah, I think that's what I need as well, because sometimes, being where I am, I guess, in Australia, and there's no real excuse for it, but yeah, just reaching out to people online and stuff as well. And when I do stuff like with Dave, like, and jump on Dave's show and stuff, it is motivating for me. I see what Dave's doing, and that motivates me as well. So I think it's yeah, the more, I suppose, like they say, like the 5 people you surround yourself with the most is the most sort of like what you're going to be most like, I guess, in a way. So I've got to do, I think, more of that in my life, definitely.
You know what I also noticed too, and look, I have roadblocks. I got to get a surgery in my foot in May 12th. I'm going to be out of commission for in terms of being able to drive and do anything, get around the way I want. And it's like every year I go through something else. And people are like, how do you always have a smile on your face? Because you know what? I always say, no matter how much I worry about it or have anxiety or let it bother me, it's not going to make it any better. So I might as well just surrender. When I went to federal prison for 5 months back in 2005, I just did that. I surrender. I give up. Whatever happens, happens. I'm just going to do it because it doesn't matter. Me worrying about it is not going to make it any less stressful or any less, better. It's not going to make it go faster. So just resign yourself. Hey, this is what was thrown at my plate. I'm just going to deal with it. But I think it's important that you always have that thing that makes you happy about something that you do. It could be as silly as playing a video game. Whatever makes you have pleasure, you got to make sure you still do that, because I think that is a good deflection off of what you think you're not enjoying in your life.
Yeah, I think that's a good point too, because I'm someone that when this stuff popped up, when stuff was serious and all that sort of stuff, and don't get me wrong, I would 100% do the same thing I did when stuff popped up, and like my partner got cancer and all that sort of stuff, where I sacrifice everything to that goal of her getting better. But I think sometimes I take it to the extreme and I continue doing that and perhaps sacrifice the little things that make me happy along the way. And I think that sometimes affects me negatively in the future. Like, it leads to more anxiety because I feel like everything's just go, go, go all the time, and there's no chill time, at least in my mind. So when I maybe stop working and sit down for a second, my mind's still go, go, go sort of thing. Like, what's the next thing? Okay, I've got this amount of time to chill. It's like 15 minutes, and then I'm going to bed or going to do this or going to do whatever. And I think that maybe just keeping some of that stuff that I really enjoy and stuff like personal things for me, whether it's just like Dave said, playing a computer game or going to get a haircut, it's probably my thing. It's important to keep that in.
Haircut, I got to try that one. Massage, massage might be better. Yeah. You're not allowed, but when you're married and have a lot of kids, you're not allowed to go do stuff like massages. There's no free time for that. So the haircut is as much as you can get out of the house for, right?
Exactly. That's funny.
Now, I do have another question. Now, if you have your adult self, Xavier, I want you to pretend you also have your 8-year-old self.
Yep.
Do you remember what you did when you were about 8? And it doesn't have to be exactly 8, but as a kid where you actually, had fun.
Yep. So I would do things like play sports, like Australian rules football. I'd kick the little soft football around the house and pretend I was like an AFL player. I would play computer games, do things like that, ride my bike, rollerblade, all that sort of stuff. Pretty much typical 8-year-old stuff.
Now, how much of that stuff do you do today?
Very, very little. In terms of playing sports, very little. That's mostly due to injury, but yeah, very little of that stuff, definitely.
What about that's not injury related? What would stop you from implementing some of those strategies now?
Really, there'd be nothing that stops me apart from a time factor, apart from if I want to do all of them, which I wouldn't.
Even if you pick one, just pick one.
Yeah, I think even bike riding or something like that, or something that, I can easily actively do. I have like a bike in my backyard right now, so I could definitely do that now.
Do you do
tricks? I find pleasure from going bowling with the kids, because I remember I used to do that when I was a kid,
Yeah, that could definitely be something I do for sure.
It's good to find outlets for sure. But which one of you was mentioning video games?
That was Dave.
Okay,
but you said that you played video games though too, right?
I don't really so much now, but yeah, back when I was 8.
I'm too addicted to video. I don't play video games ever since I was in college. And they had that's when the Apple Macintosh first came out. It was like this little rectangular box. Leslie probably remembers. Xavier does. And you'd use these hard floppy disks and you put them in there. I played this game, Wizardry. And I didn't leave my room, my dorm room for like a week straight, only to eat and come back. And after that, I destroyed the disc after that. I said, I will never play another.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, the good thing though about video games though is that when people think about when they were kids and they had fun and they did these video games, for me, I remember Pac-Man. That was the thing in my day. But I mean, well, when you look at it, it's also going into saying, okay, it's not just the game itself. It's what we call the cognitive importance behind whatever you enjoy doing. So if it's a video game, it's not just, whether it's a capture the flag thing or kill a bunch of people or whatever, or characters. It's about saying, okay, what's something I kind of suck at, I work on, I improve on, the more I practice on, and I kind of perfect and I can beat that game. So the overall cognitive importance is basically improvement.
Right.
So if you can take that cognitive importance of whatever you're doing, so let's say the biking, to saying, okay, how can I bring this into meaning in my life, of saying, okay, it's important for me to improve. That is a theme that I need to work on and I need to implement in my plan of who am I and what is the meaning of my life. It has to do some type of improvement. And there can be some parallels. Look at some of those common things that you'd like to do as a kid and actually write down what are some of the overlying themes to this. And if you want to do some work together, let me know to help you get to that. There's an overall theme of improvement. It's just not improvement upon itself. There's also some other things about how you can incorporate that into your plan of the meaning of your life. Because once you've got, here's the this is the ironic thing. Once you are able to nail down the meaning of your life, a lot of the symptoms of depression or anxiety are either they come down way much and you can manage them, and for some, they don't have them anymore. So I'm not saying if you have if you have a clear sense of your meaning of life, you won't have depression or anxiety. You can, but I'm saying to help manage that, there is a big correlation between knowing your meaning in life and being able to achieve those targets and having true fulfillment in your life, true happiness. And then you can cope with other things that life throws in your way a lot better. You can pivot and you can adjust.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense for sure. And it's actually funny when you was mentioning before about what did you do as a kid, for enjoyment and all that sort of stuff. I remember actually working for a supplement company when maybe, I don't know, 6 or maybe 7 years ago. And I was so hectic with that job, and I had a long travel time to and from work and between training and all that sort of stuff. I had very little time for anything else. Even on weekends, sometimes I'd do sort of media stuff for them. And then I remember one weekend I got to a point where I wasn't at my girlfriend at the time's family's house. I wasn't doing anything, and she just got home and started doing something. And I just found myself even my house going, what do I do to enjoy myself? What am I going to do with myself right now? Because I was literally nonstop all the time.
Yeah.
And I just went into and said to my girlfriend, I'm like, I don't even know what to do with myself. I'm like, I don't even know what I do to enjoy myself. And I'm like, I just felt like an idiot saying it.
You know what though? The truth is, and I say that to myself sometimes, when I have some downtime and I don't know what to do, and I say, you know what? The reason why I'm thinking this is because I actually like everything I do during the day. All that work stuff you do, if you find enjoyment out of that, even though it's work, this is work what I'm doing right now, but I'm actually enjoying talking to you two people. So this is pleasure for me in a sense, even though it's also work. So there's nothing wrong with enjoying your work. Not many people do. It's a weird thing that so many people have a job that they hate, and then they go home and try to do the stuff that they like. If you can actually work at the stuff that you enjoy, then you got the best job in the world,
Yeah, exactly. That's so true.
So your downtime is basically just doing nothing. Like on the weekend, sometimes when my kids take a nap, I can go do work, but I'm like, I'm just going to take a nap. I deserve it.
It's funny. I had a nap right before we did this show. Literally, I woke up 10 minutes before I jumped on here. So that's
and you feel great after that. It's like it puts you in a good mood.
Me.
I can go to sleep because my kids are exhausting sometimes. I just yelling and screaming, and it's like I have to actually just lay down in front of the TV and watch TV and escape into my whatever movie I'm watching for 45 minutes and it completely regenerates me sometimes. And I think people are afraid. Back when Leslie, you mentioned this earlier with substances and hallucinogens, stuff like that. I had a lot of trouble dealing, and I've talked to you about this with the loss of my mother growing up, and a lot of emotional issues because I used to hold everything in. And a lot of people have that same issue, and they go to bodybuilding because it's kind of like walls off those emotions, but eventually they kind of start coming out. And a lot of people do use substances, whether they drink or they use Percocets, or back in the 90s, it was the big thing was Nubane. Everyone used Nubane because Nubane, it was like a functional high. You can function perfectly, but it kind of numbed you, and I got hooked into that because I just didn't want to deal with emotions. And sometimes I think I wish I would have had someone like you to actually talk to and have sessions and release all that, because once I did release it, it was like the greatest heroin high of all time, and that's I think a lot of times, when you start bottling it up as men, especially, we tend to hold in all these emotions and try to be, tough for the family, tough for the, whatever. The exterior that we portray to the world is not sometimes how we feel inside. And that's why sometimes you see guys that commit suicide, and you're like, what the heck? This guy had everything going for him in the world. Why did he kill himself? And because he kept all this inside and he couldn't let it go. And sometimes it'll cause you to even have like a heart attack. I mean, Chris Aceto is convinced that Sean Rhoda died of stress, and so, Leslie, how do you tell someone who might be watching this who feels this way? How do you get this stuff out? How do you take that first step to working on yourself without having to take drugs to mask the pain?
Give me a chance and let's have a conversation. All it takes is one phone call, and I can help change your life. But you got to do the work and pick up the phone. I can't do that for you.
What about people there's some people who are very honest with themselves. Then there's other people that are not honest, and they don't want to go there. It's too painful. They don't want to have to deal. They don't want to talk about this. And maybe I might have been like that if I was having this conversation with you, 25 years ago. I might have said, I have nothing wrong with me,
We'll start with something that's not so intimidating.
Yeah.
So if you don't want to tell me about your deepest, darkest, most painful secret, then don't. Start with something that you're willing to.
Right.
And then we might eventually get there.
So do you think Xavier might benefit from talking to someone like you or someone else where he can actually release some of this stress that he's got on a regular basis?
Well, keep in mind, a good therapist isn't going to just help you release the stress. They're going to give you strategies. I'm really big on giving people strategies. So basically, it's about just giving you some tools. I'm not there to fix your problem. I'm here to give you a roadmap, and I'm going to encourage you to follow it. And if you don't follow it, or if you hit some bumps in the road, then we kind of take a detour, but we get you back on track. So it's like coaching in many other respects. We kind of give you a plan and you follow it. And if you don't, then I'll make you do some burpees. But other than that, no, we'll get back. You'll get you back on track. So yeah, Xavier, if you want to work with me, just let me know.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. We'll definitely send a message and stuff after the show for sure.
Do you feel better when you talk about this type of stuff? Like especially in a public forum, it's like you're kind of just releasing it. Like, I don't have to bear this burden anymore, type of thing.
Dave, that's almost exactly what I thought when I actually messaged you. And I thought to myself, I'm like, I'm not good at talking about this stuff in general. Like in a private setting, in one-on-one, I'm not very good at it. If I just put it out there, then it's like all my shit's out there. It's like, who cares? It's like, people know I've got anxiety, cool, but everyone knows. Doesn't matter. You
guys have seen Jimmy the Bull on Iron Rage. I'm convinced that's therapy for him every single week. For
sure. He's releasing a lot of demons.
People think he's just putting on? That's his therapy. He's completely releasing all his stress on everyone else. Here, you guys.
I bet he feels great like 5 minutes afterwards.
Problem is sometimes he misses a few weeks, and then by the third week he's out of his mind.
Oh, it's funny.
Anyway, well, I'm glad we got to at least talk about all this, and I think it's important because everyone has their own stuff they go through, and they have their own ways of dealing with it. I think a lot of the ways that people deal with it, unfortunately, in our industry, is self-destructive. Mm-hmm. And I'm a perfect example, and I guess Xavier can say that as well. We don't have the right roadmap, as Lesley said. So if you guys are feeling stressed out, if you don't have to necessarily be suicidal, but if you feel like you're being overwhelmed by life, give Lesley a call. Lesley, give me a number again.
So it's 416-805-6155.
And schedule a phone consult with her or Skype consult with her. How are you doing? A Zoom? What do you
I actually use something called Google Meet. Google Meet's actually more secure than Zoom.
Gotcha. And all this is all that you talk about is confidential, right? Doctor.
It is. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that you guys should give it a shot rather than having to do, drugs and alcohol to kind of mask the pain or release the pain. Talk it out. I'm telling you, you're going to feel 100 times better. I wish someone had given me this advice, like I said, 25 years ago. And Xavier, thanks for coming on and being so honest and sharing your life with us.
No, I appreciate it. I think, only good can come from it. And I don't think, there's anything too bad that can come from actually, airing out, things that you got going on mentally inside, because I think it's, I'm trying to think of a word for it, but it's just freeing, basically.
Absolutely. Well, Lesley, thank you once again. And since this show has been so successful, we will be back again next week. I'm Dave Palumbo with Lesley Timbol and our special guest, Xavier Wills. We'll see you next time.